Wednesday evening, May 4th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. Now listen to this. Forecasts have higher confidence in regards to next week than this week, especially when it comes Saturday on Shabbos. There's a range of about different computer models of a range between 5 and 10 degrees on Shabbos. No matter what, though, temperatures are expected to be below normal regardless of what model is being followed. But next week is the high confidence. The reason is because we're no longer under a progressive weather pattern. We just have one air mass that's going to situate itself over the Midwest, and it's not going to move. And you know what that is? It's actually a dome of heat. It's actually a heat wave. This is going to be the first encounter of summer weather. Real summer weather. This is not even I don't know about Chicago, to tell you the truth. I don't know what's going on in Chicago. Chicago is too complicated. So let's skip to St. Louis. St. Louis, Missouri, it's just simple. It's just hot and humid next week. High temperatures well into the 90s. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, dew points in the 70s. That's what the European computer model says. How? I don't really know. How could the dew points be in the 70s? I don't know. You look at southern Louisiana, the dew point's about 69, 70. Dew points are pretty much in the upper 60s. Then when you hit St. Louis, the dew points rise into the low 70s. And then you hit Iowa, and the dew point hits 77 degrees in southeast Iowa at some point between Monday and Wednesday. Are the cornfields out? This has got to be from the Midwest Corn Belt. What else could it be from? I don't really know. When does the corn get planted? I don't know. That would be interesting to look into. If the corn is not planted yet, then we have to figure out why these dew points are expected to be so high here in the Midwest. It's a widespread Midwest thing up for Missouri and Iowa, most of Illinois. Chicago right now is not included in this, according to the European computer model, but the National Weather Service is forecasting. They are forecasting the warmth and the humidity to reach the Chicago area, at least on some level. Temperatures may get to 90 degrees here in the Chicago area. There is some concerns of a lake breeze on Monday and Wednesday that might interfere with that. For right now, to play it safe, forecasters feel temperatures will be in the 80s Monday through Wednesday in Chicago. But the possibility of a 90 degrees is not out of question. But in the St. Louis area, it's July weather at full force. This is really full force. This is something really I was not expecting this to happen at all. Usually what I thought happens coming to May, the temperatures, you can get a full force July heat in terms of temperatures, but to combine that with humidity, usually the first 90 degree air mass of the season doesn't come with 70 degree dew points. We're just skipping. We're skipping from a below normal weather pattern. It's below normal this early in the season, or whatever you want to call, whatever season this is. This is early season, early May, late April. It's a below normal weather pattern, perhaps late March weather pattern, and we're going right away. We're jumping into summer right away, into July heat and humidity. The average dew point in St. Louis in July is 67 degrees. Forecast dew points are in the low 70s. When you read it on the National Weather Service forecast discussion for Chicago, it kind of sounds like, okay, there's a model forecasting it, but it's not really going to happen. But then when you do some more research, no, this is happening. It's really, maybe for Chicago it's not really happening. I don't know. But for St. Louis, whenever there's, St. Louis is contagious, not contagious. They have a strep throat carrier. St. Louis is a heat and humidity carrier. It's like if there's going to be heat and humidity in the Midwest, it's going to hit St. Louis. So you even see how the dew points start rising as they approach St. Louis. You go from upper 60s near the Gulf Coast to low 70s, and then you get into Iowa, the dew points rise into the upper 70s at times. You know how humid that is. A dew point is 75. The temperature of 90 degrees makes the temperature feel about 10 degrees warmer than it is. Dew point, the classic heat wave dew point in St. Louis, I always felt was 72 degrees, and that's exactly what it's going to be next week. 72 degrees, and at times 73 degrees. That's making temperatures feel 7 or 8 degrees warmer than it actually is, and realize a lot of times in the St. Louis area, there isn't much wind at all. That's something that needs to be looked into. What will the wind be? Because the wind affects heat index. So in St. Louis, usually there's not much wind in July. The question is, what's it going to be next week? From the way I envision it is that there's not going to be much wind, because it doesn't sound like this is some type of a one-day south flow that develops in response to some storm system. This is actually what's being called the blocking pattern. It's like a traffic jam within the jet stream, and this air mass is just going to get trapped here in the Midwest, and St. Louis might be the full intensity. They might be really at the peak of this, and it's just going to be trapped over there for a few days. So I wouldn't think there's going to be much wind. Maybe at the very end, right before the next storm system comes, and the question is, when is that going to be? You know, it's very interesting, because May 11th, some meteorologists call May 11th the Blackberry Winter. The Blackberry Winter means around May 11th every year in the Midwest, a very cold air mass comes in out of Canada, and it's the final blast of cold air for the season. And right after that air mass leaves, that's when I guess it's the blackberries, unless I have my berries mixed up. It's the blackberries that blossom right after that. They wait, there's a cold air mass, and then the blackberries come. This heat wave is going from Monday through Wednesday, maybe longer, but realize Wednesday is May 11th. So we're just about due for that final cold blast to come in. I would imagine it doesn't actually happen every single year, but you have to wonder, is it going to happen again? Because we're going from cold to hot. Are we then going to go back from hot to cold? So that's something that has to be looked into. Of course, here in the Chicago area, we always have to deal with hot to cold until you hit mid-June, says meteorologist Tom Skilling. We're not safe from the cold until mid-June, and that's because of Lake Michigan water temperatures. So we have these fronts, it's called the pneumonia backdoor cold front, that comes through exactly when temperatures heat up. It comes in during peak intensity. Temperatures drop extremely rapidly, and that's why it's called a pneumonia cold front. We might even get a couple of those during this heat wave next week, Monday through Wednesday. One might come in on Monday, another one on Wednesday. So the Chicago forecast is complicated as usual, but even so, there's high confidence in at least very warm air reaching the Chicago area. In terms of whether it's going to be a record breaker, well, you know, when you go about 5,000 feet above the surface, temperatures are expected to be about 77 degrees in the St. Louis area. That's 5,000 feet above the surface. So that translates to, what does that translate to on the surface? That's always been the question. 77 degrees, 5,000 feet. So I think it's between 12, it depends on the time of year. Around September, I think it's 12 degrees. That's when the days are 12 hours long, but it's going to be more than, figure, well, if the days are 12 hours long and it's 12 degrees, maybe it's for every hour a degree. We're at about 14 hours now. So figure 14 degrees, we would put the high temperature surface temperatures, the air temperature 6 feet above the surface would be about 91 degrees. But St. Louis, the official station tends to get a little bit hotter than the areas all around there. So let's say it's 91 for most of the St. Louis area. The official station could very well easily hit 93 or even 94 degrees. It might go into the mid-90s. National Weather Service says current forecasts say low 90s, but they say they may have to increase that into the mid-90s. The Chicago area has a chance of hitting 90 degrees next week, and the dew points, it's questionable. Will the dew points make it to 70 degrees or not? But widespread 70-degree dew points come into the St. Louis area for next week, and they have higher confidence in the hot weather next week than they do in the weather for right now. What's going to be happening over the next couple of days, especially when you get into Saturday Shabbos, it's going to be below normal. That's basically what you can say. We're going to have a cold front that's going to move through. Right now, you have a low pressure system. You have an upper level low, which is centered centered over the Four Cornered area. That's producing a surface low over the Oklahoma Panhandle. This surface low has a warm front extending east of it with a high risk of excessive rainfall and some risk for severe weather along that warm front. But those storms are decaying, and they will continue to decay as the night goes through. And as they push north of the warm front, they're going to run into dry air, and they will decay even more. But this low pressure system also has a dry line. The dry line extends south. It's where the cold front usually is, but it's a dry line. That's where severe weather peak intensity is. And that's where you would get perhaps tornadoes. Baseball-sized hail might even be larger than baseball-sized hail. So very, very large hail is possible in some of these storms that develop along with hurricane wind gusts. That's along the dry line. And a few tornadoes, possibly even strong tornadoes. Along the warm front, severe weather is possible too, but I think the main threat is going to be the excessive rainfall. This severe weather threat with the excessive rainfall moves into the south central states for tomorrow. That means northern Louisiana, Arkansas, eastern Texas, and also parts of Mississippi. Then the following day, on Friday, the severe weather risk affects the southeastern parts of the United States. When it moves into the southeast, however, the severe risk, the severe part of this goes down. The risk is not as high. Then that's typical. That's really typical. Tornado Alley, however, is moving into the south central, into the mid-Mississippi Valley. That's where the Tornado Alley is moving to, but it will always be by Oklahoma. That's where the dry line is. It's just extending into the mid-Mississippi Valley. Instead of extending northward, it's extending eastward. So it now includes Memphis, Tennessee. It does not include St. Louis yet. That's really, it's just south of St. Louis by Cape Girardeau, Missouri. So we're still going to see a lot of severe weather for tomorrow, but less when you get to Friday. The colder air comes in behind the cold front associated with the system. Right now, it's a dry line. By the time it hits us here in Chicago and St. Louis, it's going to be a cold front. Temperatures become cooler, well below normal for Friday, for Shabbos, Saturday. And then the winds pick up out of the south Saturday night, maybe even late afternoon for the St. Louis area. Warmer and more humid air starts to come in on Sunday. Full force heat wave begins Monday. Really a full force heat wave. Full force. No, it's not a May version. Heat indices probably 100 degrees or more in the St. Louis area. Peak heat indices 100 degrees or more. The terminology hot is the most accurate description, I think, for the St. Louis weather next week. In the Chicago area, I think heat indices will probably remain in the 90s. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone a good night.